I'm John Wilson. Welcome to Owned and Operated. Twice a week, we talk about home service businesses, and if you're a home service entrepreneur, then this is going to be the show for you. We talk about our own business in residential plumbing, HVAC, and electric, and we also talk about business models that we just find interesting. Let's get into it. If you like what we talk about on our social media, on Twitter, on this podcast, then you should be signed up for our newsletter. Go to ownedandoperated.com, where every Friday we break down our business, we break down insights, things we're learning, things we're working on, and it's good stuff. Check it out, ownedandoperated.com. Thanks for tuning in to Owned and Operated. So today, Jack and I talked about creating culture inside your organization and how you show up as a leader or as the owner or the manager of your business is going to ripple throughout the organization. So whatever behaviors you bring in every day, you should expect to have mirrored back at you. It's a great episode. I think I caught Jack by surprise a little bit with it, but there's been a lot of Twitter conversation about this recently that's really just caught my interest. Wherever you're listening to this, make sure you give us 5 stars, and thanks for tuning in. Welcome back to Owned and Operated.
Welcome back. Hey, what's going on, John?
Dude, got a weather alert. Means snow's falling. Ready for some no heats, ready to get into it this week. How about you?
About the same. Like we were talking about last episode, a little slower, but it's still chugging along. The HVAC needs to get colder.
Yeah.
Needs to drop. I'm wearing a short sleeve t-shirt. I need to
know.
be wearing a long sleeve, a sweatshirt, and be freezing, and I'll be happy.
Yeah, I assume that was just to show that you've been working out or something, but it's cool. All right, so today we're going to put up our dukes a little bit, and we really don't know each other's positions on this, so it should be entertaining. And the conversation was going to be about managing culture or creating culture.
Yeah. And what's your position?
Well, I want to know yours first. All right, so walk me through your position on creating or managing culture inside your business.
I know we're in a different room today. If anyone's watching on the video portion of this, my wife's clanging around in the background because I have the festive lights behind me. I'm in the kitchen. But speaking of festivals and Christmas and everything, company culture, I think that this is a big glory point in your company where you get to show your company culture and how you appreciate your employees. And I think it ties into bonuses and spiffs and company alignment. There's a lot of things. And so when you say company culture, I don't know which way you're going with it. Like, where do you want to
Okay.
take this? And there's the other side of benefits and how you treat your employees. And
I think that
which
all
way?
ties in. So, like, company culture, every company has a culture. It's just whether or not you actively manage it and how much thought you put into it. So, like, you've made decisions that you've talked about on our conversations where you're like, hey, my guys are flat rate. That's a company culture decision.
Mhm.
You've created a you eat what you kill, you participate in the upside culture. That's very different
Correct.
than like a new construction culture where you just go in and you get paid your hourly and whatever it takes, right? And that is a cultural decision. So that's going to impact how you hire. It's going to impact how you retain. It's going to impact how you bonus, how you reward, the behaviors that you like, the behaviors you don't like, what type of softwares you use, what softwares you don't use. So it's going to have all these ripple effects because you've taken the stance that your company is going to have the culture that you have a shared upside, which not every company has. We have the same perspective. I think we just try to be a little bit more deliberate about it. And really, where I was coming from when I brought this conversation up was as simple as a core values conversation. Because I think core values is like, it feels a little up in the air and it feels a little cloudy. But we can talk about whichever section of this you want to talk about. But I think that culture is ultimately who's the right fit for your business and how are they the right fit for your business. And when you think about your very best team member and you want to replicate that team member 10 times, 50 times, 100 times, then like what is it that makes them the best? And then how do you replicate them? And how do you design a business that attracts that type of person? And that's culture.
Yeah, to take that even a step further, I think it comes down to also what kind of drive of people do you want in your company? Do you want people that are externally driven by money, fame, power? Or do you want internally driven people who are driven by their internal goals on, hey, I want promotion because it makes me feel better, or I want to do good, hit these markers and hit these goals? And so how do you look at, do you prefer to hire people who are monetarily driven or internally driven? What do you look for?
Both. I don't know that hits culture yet, though. So I want to make sure we hit this because I think it's like I was having a conversation with someone the other day. It was about Nolan's Twitter post. So Nolan dropped this Twitter post where it was like, "Hey, I bought this company, and this company used to take Christmas week off, and I'm not going to do that. And because I'm not going to do that, the new employees didn't. That was an unpopular decision. Like it used to be just like a free paid week, I think. And that's a company culture decision. But the ripple effects of that decision are kind of like really reaching when you think about it. Like that means that company is not in a home service business. I'm sure there's other businesses that this does not apply to. So, like home service, demand and cash flow. So, from my perspective, that means that owner is not optimizing for growth. They're not optimizing for revenue. They're not optimizing for opportunity in front of people, which means that their guys probably aren't going to earn top wages because it's really hard to pay people top wages when you're not driving revenue, not rocket science. They're probably not going to have the best benefits, but they get time off for the owner and maybe the team. So what that culture tells me is this is going to be an underperforming culture led by the owner. And I think that was probably the main thing I wanted to drive through culture is it's like what behaviors, and I think this is probably the hardest thing for people to accept is like core values or culture is basically whatever the owner either makes it or permits it to be. So I work every day inside the office and I sit inside the call center. That's a part of our culture. And people bring that up. Like that's something is not because I bring it up, but because other people bring it up. It's relevant to them that the CEO sits outside with the call takers. They see that as like a part of like a we're in the trenches together, driving today's performance together. And that's a part of our culture to maximize every day. And I'm there pushing with them. And that I suspect is highly different than the person that took a week off after Christmas with their entire company. Does that make more sense?
I think we're on the same line then. I know that there's other people, and I won't say names, but that kind of on the Twitter sphere lean the other direction. But I'm definitely in the same boat with you in terms of lead from the front mentality. I know I respect a lot of the guys who specifically used to run, like were ex-military, like Rich and all those guys. You can tell that they believe in that same lead from the front mentality, whether it's in the field or in the call center or actually going out on doing job walks with the guide, because at the end of the day, right, that's huge. You can't just sit behind a desk and hope that everyone's going to respect you and want you to, well, I shouldn't say sit behind a desk. You should be disconnected from your team is really it. Close the door, disconnect, and then expect them to follow you as a leader when you're not leading or just delegating out every single task.
Hey, this episode is sponsored by Service Scalers. So, Service Scalers is actually a brand that I've used personally with our companies for a little bit over a year now. They've helped us manage our digital advertising. Frankly, they did a lot better than our last agency. Leads went through the roof and cost per click went way down. Check out Service Scalers if you're a plumbing, HVAC, or electrical home service company. That's what they knock out of the park, and they did a great job for me.
I thought this conversation was going to take a different path, but this is one that I'm not prepared for. It's an interesting conversation on how to verbalize and give, kind of a how to talk about doing it intentionally because it's not something that I've ever done intentionally. My history was working right out of college with lots of really skilled tradesmen who had been quote unquote from old man Ron himself, who used to work for me. I've been doing this longer than you've been alive, boy. It's one of those things where you start from that point and you have to understand that's how a lot of them think and how a lot of them feel. Even when you have to try and do change management and push initiatives and still drive revenue. So they have to know that you're in the trenches with them and that you're part of a team and that you're driving all in the same direction. I think that you hit the nail on the head when you're saying that doing that through compensation is important, doing that through presence and actually physically being there is important. And then I think that as silly as it sounds, as simple as it sounds, legitimately caring about your people and your team is a big step. We send out birthday cards on people's birthdays and all the little things that really do show the team that you care and that you're listening to them and that you understand that they're people. I don't think that there's very many people on that last point that will disagree with that last point. That being said, I'm rambling here because I am stuck on not fully knowing how to verbalize how to build culture. I thought this was going to be a conversation about Christmas parties and
No, I think Christmas parties maybe are a result of it, but I was really like, I really lost myself in this thought train of what sets our business apart from that business that took the week off after Christmas. And like in some ways, people would look at my decision and my sort of scorn at that owner's decision to do that and be like, wow, that guy's a dick. A lot of people on Twitter did say that, which I thought was hilarious. But what they don't see is that my average tech probably makes double or triple what that guy's average tech would, or that our benefits are significantly better because we are a revenue and growth culture that drives performance daily and every day matters. I think that I bought a business that did that once where they worked 410s and then they took the week after Christmas off. It was a very laid back culture, which is good. There's good things about that. But then they also couldn't figure out how they couldn't get to the next level. And it's like, you can't get to the next level because you're not attempting to get to the next level. Like you're actively cutting yourself off at the ankles. You are removing revenue opportunities, which that's now a part of your culture. A part of your culture is ignoring revenue. It's these decisions that make it that way. Or the owner that doesn't show up, or the CEO, doesn't have to necessarily be the owner, but the person who's running it, hiding in their office is a decision, and it's a demonstration to the rest of the leaders in your business that it's okay if they hide in their office. That's okay because this guy's doing it. I don't even know that it's like you keep saying verbalize, but I think it's really like what if everyone is looking up to you inside an organization, what are they going to see? And what actions are they going to act back to you? What are they going to mirror like a toddler? Because that's exactly what's going to happen. The behaviors that you bring every day are the behaviors that your team is going to mirror. So if you come in and you scream at everybody, then other people on your team are going to scream at everybody. If you come in with a smile and crack jokes, then everyone's going to smile and crack jokes. If you push on sales, people are going to care about sales. But like, what are you putting out into your company? Because that's exactly what you're going to get back.
Yeah, that's a fair way to verbalize it, I think. It's almost like kids.
It is. Yeah, it is like
You
kids.
know, you can see some of those actions. I think it becomes less about culture and more about a leadership discussion at that point. Like I said, man, this caught me off guard. But you're right. A lot of people would view that as, hey, you don't appreciate your employees enough to give them the work-life balance of having Christmas off or the week after Christmas off. And I'd say we're in the same boat there. As we're joking about not giving Christmas Eve off. Obviously, we're not going to do that, but the whole team was laughing about it because it would be right up the alley of the culture of something that,
Hmm.
that I would ask. Obviously, I didn't ask because I find that inappropriate, but at the same time, the team was mostly ready to do it. And it's that culture that you build is extremely important. And I think it permeates through items like you said, how you hire, decisions on work-life balance, on are you going to run an on-call schedule? How are you going to run that on-call schedule? What are you prioritizing in your business? And I think that we come down to we prioritize revenue and growth first over everything. When I talk about my personal culture at the company, we definitely care about our employees a lot. We don't have the ability to offer the same things, but what we are offering is the same idea of everybody being a part of this large growth business that we all have the same end goal in mind. And I take a look a lot of times from that culture from people like the PayPal story of, I couldn't imagine not paying employees for a month.
Hmm.
But I think that realistically, there's a few employees that would actually stay and work through if we had to do that. I look at that as being the quintessential idea is would your employees stay with you and work through a hardship if they knew they weren't going to get paid for a month?
Hmm.
I don't know if we're going to even post this episode after. I feel like I'm rambling through on this one, but maybe it's good just to hear it. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a culture, and we can call it leadership. I still think of it as culture because I think that leadership is like it's about you, and I don't think this is about you, and I certainly don't think it's about me. I think it's culture is top down in that like it starts with me or it starts with whoever's at the top, but it permeates the whole thing. And we're not sitting here trying to create leaders. It's not overly complicated, I don't think. It's just, it's hard for most owners to accept and come to terms with the actions that they take will be mirrored back, and you are fully responsible for the results that you get. So if someone's like, yes, we're going to take a week off, and you start wondering why your team is not driven to drive more revenue, it's because you built that culture. You made that decision that had a ripple effect of people caring less about revenue. Or if you don't have incentive pay and they're just hourly, that's a decision that you've made. If you go on once a quarter drug benders to South America I know that was a guy I knew that did that. Then you've created this culture that like one that's permissible and two it's like, pop off, I guess. Like given to your vices.
How do you turn that, right, that idea into the pillars and of the company then? Like, where do you form that into those pillars and how do you create that device?
Like what do you want out of your business? So I was reading a newsletter the other day and it was by the Secret CFO. Have you read his newsletter?
No.
It's good. And he's doing a series right now on cash flow. And it's like an 8-week series. And the series was all about if you don't have a cash flow obsessed culture, you will never improve your cash flow. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense, right? Everybody has to be bought into cash flow. And he started explaining what a cash flow culture meant. And the cash flow culture was like the CEO cares about cash flow. And then he asks about cash flow. He pushes on cash flow. When somebody doesn't make decisions that drive towards cash flow, he asks why and he holds people accountable to that because they're not aligned on what he's trying to do. And I think that was a really good example. That was paired up within a day or two of this other one of
Hmm.
just like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And that's how I think about it. And that's how we try to live it every day. Whereas if I want managers to care every day about the numbers, then I have to care about the numbers and I have to hold them accountable to that. And I have to set that example of what I expect to be mirrored back at me. And if I want my team members treated with respect, or if I want people to care about revenue, or if you want all these things, you have to care. You have to like go in there and do beyond potentially what they expect. I think my point here was how you show up every day. And maybe this is on leadership now, but how you show up every day is going to get mirrored back at you. So think about what you want back from your team. Do you want accountable people that if I make a mistake, I'm going to apologize for it? Because I expect when they make a mistake that they're going to apologize for it. If I make a decision, then I'm going to own it, just like I would expect them to own it. What behaviors do you want mirrored back to you exactly as you gave them? Because that is, I think, what ultimately, as you hire more people and as you interview more people and as you grow teams and build managers, culture becomes out of control. Like you lose the control of culture if you don't build it and if you don't instill that early enough. I got in this like Twitter conversation about core values like 6 months ago with Chris Munn. And Chris is great. And he was saying, like, I don't understand the purpose of core values. And it's okay if we don't ultimately agree. But my feedback was core values is culture management at scale. Because eventually at 150 people, I don't have the time to manage every minute thing, but this gives everyone a guardrail.
So that's where I was going to disagree is I think that a lot of times I've worked at Fortune 500
Yeah.
companies, a lot of times the way that they do the culture at scale is done absolutely terrible. They put those guardrails up, they put the bumpers on, and that's it. You're right. They do that and they walk away. And what ends up creating is an adverse reaction towards that, the whole pillar system in itself. And it's because at scale, sometimes when done terribly, leaves a really sour taste in people's mouths. You feel like a cog in the wheel, you feel unappreciated.
But I also think that is culture. Like that is like the how do you show up? How do you build teams? And at some point, maybe the business just gets so big that it's impossible. But I think that at some point, if you can, like, I guess I would argue that maybe it doesn't. Like Elon does it. And like Tesla's big, SpaceX is big. And like he is personally driving the culture in the way that I'm thinking about it. And like he is doing what he expects to be mirrored back. He's sleeping in his office. He's like inside product demos. He's a very active participant from the outside. Obviously, I have no idea. So I don't know that a company can get too big. Maybe it can, but I think that it's a decision that people make to not get as involved as maybe they should or to let culture run away. But my point is, culture will run away from you if you don't build it as early on as you can and as hands on as you can. Because eventually you will be 4 or 5 or 6 layers away from the vast majority of your company.
I'm trying to go through the framework of why I was so why I didn't like the culture of the Fortune 500 company I'm referring to so drastically. And I think it was done as a reason that they felt they needed to do it. But like, gosh, I have to clean my room. So you just throw everything into a bucket and just put it in the closet. And it comes out that way. And I don't know whose fault it is when an organization gets that big. But to scale it back, ultimately the leader, like with Elon Musk in a leadership role, I think the two are inevitably tied, right? And the decisions you make
Hmm.
as the leader will create that culture that permeates through your entire company. I like that one. I see that on the daily, how you come in and how your managers come in really is going to be what's given back to you from your employees. And if they don't, they'll end up leaving and being replaced with people who will,
Yeah.
right?
Right. I think the big message I wanted to impart, just as I'm thinking about culture in general, and I don't think we've done culture perfectly by any means. I think culture is ever moving, ever changing. And the biggest thing that I'm trying to work on now inside our business is the culture in my managers and my frontline managers so that they can work directly with my field team and impart how attempting to impart. But culture is how you show up every day. And it's mainly driven by you, the owner, you, the leader. And it's how you show up is going to get reflected back. All right. Thanks for tuning in to Owned and Operated. Thanks for tuning in to Owned and Operated, the podcast for home service entrepreneurs. If you enjoyed today's episode, please hit the like button and subscribe to the podcast. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, feel free to reach out. You can find me on Twitter at @WilsonCompanies. I'll see you next time.